I'm going to hit the button about 10 seconds, Ian. If it doesn't work, I'll let you know.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself, so I'll just keep a listen out.
Okay.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're coming from. Welcome to a webinar here from Nautel, located in Hackett's Cove, Nova Scotia, not far from Halifax, where we're getting a little snow. It's starting to get a little snowy. They're saying we're going to have between 10 and 15 inches of snow this evening and this afternoon. I'm Chuck Kelly, and welcome to this webinar on the subject of the Advanced User Interface, a feature of most all Nautel transmitters. I am very fortunate today to have with me Mr. Scott Martin, the head of digital design. Good afternoon, Scott.
Hi, Chuck. Hi, everybody.
We're going to talk about a number of things, and it's kind of unique to be focusing on one aspect of a transmitter, but across a number of product lines. So we're going to be focusing on the Advanced User Interface, what we call the AUI. We're going to be actually doing some live demonstrations, and we're going to talk about how people put the AUI to work and what its particular benefits are to a radio station. The Advanced User Interface, or AUI, is more than just a graphical user interface. As a matter of fact, it's really a portal to a very sophisticated control system built into the Nautel transmitters. And Scott, can you maybe describe a little bit more about why the distinction there?
Well, I think the way we've designed the transmitter is in terms of the software, all of the individual components in the transmitter, the power modules, et cetera, the exciters, they all have their own software running on them, and they all sort of analyze themselves. And so all of them together sort of merge at the AUI, where you can see how all of the individual components are working. So the AUI is looking into all the various components and interacting with them to collect information and to show their performance.
Because it's so integrated.
Yeah.
Okay. So what that means to the user is that it lets you do more with less. It empowers junior engineers. The test equipment's already built inside, and it's already connected up, and you can see it from a distance. Because of that, it avoids trips, it provides more sleep, and it saves the customer money. These are all things that are advantages of the AUI. And really, this is a response by Nautel, a conscious response to the fact that the broadcast engineering community isn't getting bigger at the moment. It tends to be getting smaller. The engineers tend to be getting older. It's a problem we're facing in our industry. And having the AUI included in a transmitter makes it possible for a knowledgeable engineer to become far more efficient in servicing stations. So it addresses the challenge of thinning engineering resources. The AUI is different because it is a portal to the Nautel Control System. It is not a off-the-shelf remote control system, nor is it an interface just to an exciter, because there are a number of exciters that have systems that allow you to graphically see what's going on inside the exciter, but they don't tell you what's going on inside the transmitter. And there are hundreds of parameters. What is the most complex AUI we have? Can you think off the top? It'd probably be one of them very high-power AM rigs or something.
Well, yeah, certainly if you were talking about an NX300, that would be by far the most, because we would have, 40 modules in a rack. That's 3 racks. That'd be 120 modules, and who knows, maybe 30, 40 channels per module. Right. So it's a huge amount of data that it has access to. But as Chuck says, the AUI is the software of the AUI runs on a single board computer that's built into the door of the transmitter, but it's only interacting with the transmitter. It doesn't run the transmitter, and I think that's one of the key points.
It's a very key point.
We want to make clear here is that it's giving you access to what's in the transmitter.
Okay, so it does look at every aspect, and really it's thousands potentially of parameters which are monitored within the AUI.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of built-in instrumentation, which we'll see in detail. It provides a central view of one or multiple exciters. In other words, you add an extra exciter to the transmitter, and now you have the opportunity to view from one common AUI that all the features and functions and measurements of that second exciter as well.
Yep, that's right.
And it took over 10 years, man-years of effort. You have a pretty substantial engineering.
I was just trying to think. The NX came out with the AUI first, and that was probably three or 4 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's been a constant development effort here at Nautel, with you know, 2 or 3 people on average at least working on this, and it's been constant.
All the time.
And you know, Nautel's coming out with new products all the time, and they're all getting this.
Yep.
So it's a continuing effort.
All the new products for Nautel, even the least expensive, have an AUI.
Yep.
One of the things we talked about a little bit is the fact that we've made the exciters across all these products, we've made the exciters integral to the transmitter, which allows a less expensive exciter, and it allows a common point monitoring system in the case of the AUI that can see not only what's going on in the transmitter, but also peer into the innards of both of the exciters.
Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about these product families that the AUI is pardon me, contained within. We have the NXSeries, the first one to contain the AUI. That was it's an AM transmitter series that goes from 25 kilowatts up to 2 megawatts. And so one common AUI, I should mention here that an AUI is really a web server. An AUI is a web server built into the transmitter, in part.
Certainly, that's a big part of it. Yes,
so
that's right.
What that means to you is that if you're running a PC with an internet connection and you've connected an internet connection to your transmitter, you can then, with just nothing more than a web browser, it's not software on your machine, nothing more than a web browser, you can access the AUI within the transmitter and control and see it just as we're going to do here today.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, the second series that was introduced with the AUI is the NV series of solid-state FM transmitters that go from 3.5 kilowatts up to 88 kilowatts. And we will peek in on one of those and show you the AUI there. And the newest series is the VS series, which goes from 300 watts to 2.8 kilowatts, really, in 3 models, a 300 watt, the 1 kilowatt, and a 2.5 kilowatt. And that also has an AUI, and we will peer in at one of those as well.
Yeah, and just before you leave, Chuck, I just want to make the point that on the bigger transmitters, there is a 17-inch monitor on the door of the transmitter,
right.
And what you see there is exactly the same thing. Everything that you can do from that interface is exactly what you can do from a remote connection. So if you're at your desktop back at the studio or at home or wherever you're trying to do your work, you get the exact same interface.
Good point.
Through that, and you'll see when we get to it on the VS series, because it's actually such a small transmitter, we do still provide. We can't put a 17-inch monitor on the front of the transmitter; that's just too big. So we do have a small LCD, sort of a more traditional style interface for the transmitter as a local interface, but it still has the AUI for remote connectivity. So running a web browser from your desktop, you get a full AUI implementation.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about first the NX series, the high power solid state. The NX50 is exactly as you see it on the screen here, a relatively small 50 kilowatt transmitter. I remember 50 kilowatt transmitters that were massive, multiple room type of things with power supplies and cooling and all that. This is all there is. This is the box. And it's the top efficiency transmitter in the industry at 90%. It has pre-correction built into it. It has both RF and audio spectrum analyzers as well as a network analyzer built into it. The modulation system has 2.7 megasamples per second. It has the intuitive touchscreen interface, which is basically the AUI, as Scott has said, which is this 17-inch color LCD touchscreen on the front of the transmitter. It is ultra compact, about the size of a refrigerator, and designed and optimized for HD radio as well as DRM, I should say. This is the block diagram of the NX50. you can see the various modules, which are hot pluggable. You see the modular drive, the power supplies, mains, transformers, and all that sort of thing. And then you can see the 17-inch LCD GUI system here.
Yeah, and in this block diagram, of course, that represents two pieces. One is the LCD that is actually on the door, but
yeah, there's a single board
on the other
computer.
Side of the door is a single board computer.
That's right.
Which is running the web server, etc.
That's right. That's right. So the control system is separate, and so the key here is that I could sever this wire right here, and the transmitter still works just fine.
Right.
And in fact, we look at it. Oops, I guess I took that shot out. So I will show that in a second. But let me switch over right now and let everybody see an actual operating NX transmitter. So we're going to switch out to Los Angeles. And now we are logged into, and hopefully everybody's seeing, an NX50 belonging to KSPN radio, the voice of ESPN, at 710 kilohertz in Los Angeles, courtesy of our friend Mike Tosh. And thank you, Mike. We're looking at his AUI system right now, and this is a live view. Mike has been kind enough to provide us the login credentials to be able to see his transmitter. You can see the spectrum analyzer in the upper left-hand corner. You can see the modulation levels. You can see the audio input levels. He's using AES EBU in and out. He's also, as you can see here, running IBOC right now, HD radio. And here you can see actually a network analyzer. I'm going to zoom in on that for a second. If you look at this, you can actually see the cusp of his transmitter operating into a real load, his antenna system. And if I hit these buttons here, you can see the actual measurements of the impedance as we adjust the frequency. So if I come down here to carrier frequency, you can see that we are very close to the locus right there at 50 ohms day zero. And as we rotate around there to plus or minus 15 kilohertz from that, you can see the ramifications both on the X and the R in this transmitter. So this is providing an amount of test equipment into the transmitter that it used to take hours and hours and hours to do.
Well, this is very sophisticated instrumentation that is just basically provided with the transmitter.
I can remember using an operating impedance bridge and taking many measurements and sweeping a system, and it took hours to do this, and we're doing it live, real-time, with modulation built into the transmitter and viewing it from 4,000 miles away.
Yep.
Not half bad. Okay, so let's go back and look at what other instruments are available here, Scott. Maybe you can help.
Well, yeah, just close that for
okay.
Maybe just click on the side. So
okay.
So the AUI is sort of our first look at it. So you can see the layout of the AUI, and it's the same for all products. But there's a top banner, and Chuck has sort of the,
you can see with the mouse here,
the cursor. That whole area is fixed. It doesn't change. All the information you see there stays, regardless of what you're doing through the AUI. But
right.
You'll see sort of a section for the date and time. There's a scheduler that we'll take a quick look at later.
Mm-hmm.
You can see kind of the higher level configuration, I guess, the operating configuration, and the sort of an exciter little panel showing some modulation from the exciter. At the very bottom is again the bottom banner, I call it, where again essential controls, and these don't go away. They're always present. RF on off. A little message area which we don't do a whole lot with. It's there's a menu button, a status button, logs, local remote, reset, and change user. And we'll quickly go through all of these so you can get a sense of what they are. But the section in the middle is where is sort of the activity area. And what Chuck has been showing you at this point is sort of the home page where all the instruments are available.
So I can take any of these instruments and plug them into any of those 4 holes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. So Chuck has just brought up a menu of all the available instruments that you can show. So you can show up to 4 at a time. And as Chuck showed you with that Smith chart, you can maximize and minimize. Depending on the instrument, there are different things you can do with them.
Okay.
Okay.
So walk through some of these, Scott. Let us know what those are. The EQ frequency response, EQ impulse, filter delay, AM to AM, AM to PM correction.
Yeah. So the transmitter does have an equalization function, so you can
compensate for nonlinearities that are occurring in both the transmitter and to the extent that the antenna causes nonlinearities in the transmitter, correct for those as well.
Yep. And the AM to AM, AM to PM correction are for HD operations, so you can set up essentially correction tables to compensate again for the loads. When you're running HD, you can see the constellations.
Click on that. We're just looking at a data, or not a data carrier, but a reference carrier.
A reference carrier. So you know the iBox system. What you're doing is you're transmitting a whole set of individual subcarriers, and what you can do through this signal constellation is you can look at each individual subcarrier. Now, on some of the subcarriers are reference subcarriers, meaning they just exist as two-state signals.
This one's a reference carrier.
And that's a reference carrier. And what you can do, there's controls here, plus minus, for example.
If I was a real logged-in user, I could click on these.
Yeah, and then you could go and sort of sweep through all of the subcarriers and look at the constellation and look at their signal. You can get a sense of the signal quality based on the fuzziness of those.
And we can show that on some of the other AUIs we're going to look at. Because this is an on-the-air system, we're only being given the rights to view. That doesn't allow us to change that.
But you can already tell that just looking at the reference, it's a very clean signal.
That's
right.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, let's see if there's anything else we want to talk about here on this screen. So this is you.
That's Chuck's favorite. I'll let him talk about that.
Okay. Well, this is you is a pretty cool. This one isn't really operating the way we would normally expect to see it because it's looking at I and Q. But ElysIS-U, which we'll see on some of the other AUIs, is a very simple way of seeing both the amplitude and the phase characteristics, typically, of the left and right channels.
Yeah. It's showing this way because we're running HD.
In HD mode.
It changes depending on what mode you're running in.
So let's see here. What else we got? That's pretty much it. The audio inputs is a useful one. The audio modulation levels is very useful. I don't know if anybody's seen a modulation monitor as informationful as this is. You can really see what's going on both in the negative modulation side and the positive modulation side. Then on the right-hand side, we have our meters. Yeah. So this is sort of another function that's part of the home page, but if you click on the meters tab, then what you see is on the left side you see what is essentially a hierarchy of all the individual components in the transmitter that are referred to later. That each of these would have their own sort of software. They're all doing they're all active components, if you like. And so what we can do is, as Chuck selects each one of them, we can see all of the channels of data that's available. And you can check, when you check any one of these boxes, you can then, you'll notice that what you see, the meters that you see on the far right side of the display, you can sort of see these nice graphical meters of each of these channels. And you'll see that they're color-coded so that you can see they're sort of what's really good,
what the actual value is, and then where it is with respect to its sort of
norms.
Yeah, its alarm or sort of out of norm state. So yellow would be sort of a cautionary state, and red would be it would probably be triggering an alarm.
Let me show everybody my favorite feature that really explains the depth to which the AUI lets you see what's inside the transmitter. If I hit this one and then I hit cubes, there are 20 cubes within this transmitter which are represented by these 20 columns. And these are the things that we're monitoring on every cube.
Yeah, and all of these are available. You could bring these up as individual meters, which Chuck was just doing. But this is what I call the info panel, or a summary page of all of these. So, when you're trying to analyze, troubleshoot problems, it's nice to be able to see everything all at once.
Absolutely.
And you can even do comparisons across all of the cubes.
And you can see it dynamically changing. Yeah,
and you can sort of see some that maybe look a little off from others that could be. Those could be indicators of issues as well. So it's very
powerful.
Display.
Very powerful. So let me put this away, and let's talk about the buttons down. Now we've made it so that we can't turn on and off this transmitter, so we're not tempted.
Yeah.
We click Menu here. kind of walk us through the basics of this? We'll go
All
into
right.
presets a little bit more on the MV, see
Sure.
if we can adjust them.
So these are all the things, these are sort of all the activities, and when we click on one of these icons, then what it will do is it'll bring up a new page, sort of fill up the activity area, and then and you can, so Chuck has just brought up sort of the hardware configuration, and all transmitters need configuration, and for AM that's there's a lot of stuff that you can configure. You set your B plus levels.
A lot of this right now is grayed out, and it's because we're not set up as a user with write capability.
Yeah, and we can get into that shortly. But there's just a lot of stuff. The AM PM correction down here. This is where you can sort of create new correction curves and then apply them. You can select them and apply them. So there's all kinds of
tons and tons of control. Here's where you get into setting your XGen.
Yeah, and these are all typically one-time settings in here. These are things you might do when you're setting up the transmitter, and you probably don't have to come back.
Or
here.
it may come, as it did in this case, it may come pre-configured from Nautel.
Yeah, very often that would be the case too. Absolutely.
It is worth mentioning, since we're talking about the NX here, that the NX, I believe, is the only transmitter that has an IMQ, a digital IMQ connection directly into the exciter from the XGen, and in fact the XGen is mounted inside the NX transmitter.
That's right.
So that's why the control settings for the XGen you find right here in the AUI. We should press on. We've got lots of other things to do.
Okay.
Something else you want to talk about on this page?
No. Do you want to go through quickly some of these other buttons on the
We'll
bottom?
do that on some of the other
Okay, sure.
of the other transmitters.
Absolutely.
So we will move over, and we will go back to here for just a moment. Okay, and do this. Okay, so the NV series is a 3.5 kilowatt through 88 kilowatts, high power, no tuning, no tubes, more redundancy, less downtime, has its own share of advanced instrumentation and control. We've shipped over 400 of them, and let me now. That's the block diagram of the NV40. Again, the AUI and the single board controller, which are little blocks down here, are completely separate than the operation of the transmitter. You can continue to operate the transmitter without having the single board computer and or the AUI. So without further ado, let's switch over and go to the AUI. Now we're moving from Los Angeles to Quincy, Illinois, to the Nautel service facility there, which has an operating NV5 sitting there in its facility. And Kevin Rogers is there standing by, assisting us, but we have an operating transmitter we can completely control. We have the rights on this transmitter, since it's not actually on the air, it's going into a dummy load, to turn it on and off, so it will switch on and off, and we can make that change as we want to. This transmitter is also running in HD mode. Now we can see signal constellation.
Yeah, so we're looking at subcarrier number 2 of 546.
That's right.
In this transmitter.
And you can see we're actually running in HD mode here. One thing that's kind of interesting is we can actually, in the FM unit, we can actually switch and go from a transmitter RF spectrum analyzer to an audio spectrum analyzer that's looking at the composite baseband.
This is very cool.
Yeah,
I
so
think
this is 10 kilohertz per division horizontally, 10 dB per division vertically. So this is your L plus R right here. This is your 19 kilohertz pilot. This is the double sideband suppressed carrier L minus R. And if I were to go into one of the settings, in fact, let's just go ahead and do that. I want to turn on RDS. So let's come down here to RDS settings and turn on RDS. And that'll be fine.
That's all you need to do.
That'll be fine. So we just hit save and activate, and now we close that. And there comes my RDS subcarrier right there at 57 kilohertz.
Yeah.
So that's a very powerful tool. The fact that I did this 2,000 miles away is pretty neat.
Yeah.
So let's go back here. We have, again, the correction curves. In this case, on the AM transmitter, it was equalization. It's an algorithm we run once in a while, and it presets the correction in the transmitter. In the FM transmitters, it's dynamic, it's adaptive.
Yeah.
And so the frequency response, the impulse response, the EQ filter delay, AM to AM, AM to PM, all of those are indicating changes that the transmitter is making to optimize its performance in both analog and digital mode. And here's my favorite Lissajou, which I can bring up and make full screen, in an L plus R. Think of this as an oscilloscope where the right channel is the vertical input and the left channel is the horizontal, and everything is perfect. It's a line going this way, or in this case a fuzzy ball, which indicates we actually have some stereo content. If it was going the other way, like this, you'd know we were out of phase. And if it was a line either straight horizontal, we'd have no right, or straight vertical, we'd have no left. You can see an awful lot at a single glance with a Lissajou. So I promised to take a look at logs. We can go in here and we can see the logs.
Yep.
Would you like to explain a little bit more
Sure.
about the functionality here?
So again, we talked about the hierarchy of the system, and there are individual components, and they all report. They can all report logs, for example. So what you're seeing here, every time there's an event in the transmitter, a log can come from many subcomponents, or maybe just one of them had the event, but they will send it up. It'll come up to the single board computer, and then the software on that will put it into a database. So what we're really looking at here is a database of logs that have been captured. And so what we do is we show what device that event occurred in, we show the name of the event, the state of the event, so we see when it came and when it went away.
Yep.
That's indicated by the icons. The red bell is supposed to be when it happened, and then the green check is when it went away.
And isn't this just indication of something, or a notification?
Well, that's just a different icon to say that you've turned the transmitter on.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. And then the severity of each of these is sort of classified. We have kind of a little scheme of a yellow, red, and multiple exclamations, and then the time of the event.
And I just did a device. I wanted to look only at exciter, so I guess I get logs again, and
Yeah.
I will only then see things that happened in the exciter.
Yeah, and you can also sort of click on the headings of these, and then see them in various orders as well.
Yep.
So you can see things in different you can see all alarms of the same type if you click on the alarm.
Yep.
Right. So
okay. Very
lots
good.
of ways to view data.
So very sophisticated logging system.
Yep.
Okay.
Status. So we haven't seen the status. If you want to bring that up.
Okay.
So if there were any active alarms in the transmitter right now, and you can see that the status button is green, so there's no alarms. And what would happen if there were any alarms in the transmitter, then they would be listed, again, with the device that's reporting the alarm, what the alarm is, and what the level is. All those would be listed.
Okay.
Okay.
Now another thing that's tied to this, Scott, is the ability that this transmitter has to actually send out an email.
Yes.
When something goes out of variation. So I would go into software configuration.
Software
for
configuration.
that. And I would go to email configuration.
Not email notifications.
Okay. Well, let's look at email configuration too.
You just set up.
That's right. That's where you set up
for your
all
email
of that.
server. Yeah.
Okay. And then over here you would add a notification.
Yeah.
And you would choose a fault, I presume.
Yeah. Choose a fault. Say, I'm interested in this fault. Whenever it occurs, I want to know about it. And just pick one. And
so how would I choose, for instance, I guess it would be where I have, or down, more than 10% low in power. How would I do that? Low forward power.
Low forward power, probably. So you just
go over there.
Send that over.
And, okay.
And then you put in, then up here you have to say what the name of this notification is going to be. Okay.
All right.
And then you say who do you want to send it to?
Okay. Whoop. I got that right.
And you can list you can put in lots of alarms, and all of them will trigger that email. And you'll get an email that sort of has a little bit of information about what the notification name was, when it happened, and
so now if I close it here, it's saved.
Yeah.
Very good, and it'll show up here at some point? Or did I do something
Maybe you
wrong?
didn't save it quite right.
Okay. Well, anyway, we'll figure that out. So anything else? Here's where we set up the network configuration of this particular transmitter, and we can upgrade the software
Upgrade
here.
software. So to upgrade software, basically we issue what we call TGZ files, which are just kind of like zip files. You can put those on your desktop, and then you can load the TGZ file directly onto the transmitter
From hundreds of miles
from
away.
wherever, and then you could just say begin, and then off it goes, and it will program all of the devices that need to be programmed in the device. So it includes all the files
It'll
for all
update your
the
exciter,
components.
it'll update your modules.
Yeah, it'll just run through and do it.
Okay, very good. All right, anything else we should talk about here before we move on?
We haven't looked at the user account stuff yet. I mean,
Okay.
if you look at the menu,
Yeah.
There's user accounts. We haven't looked at that. There's changeover. There's a changeover page.
So user accounts is where we set up various different types of users.
Yeah.
And a super user can create new users. A regular user can control, and then a guest or something
Yeah,
can
it could just be a read only and
read only.
can't
So
have
those are
any.
3 classifications.
Yep.
Okay, so let's continue on and go back to our little road map here and page down. This is the actual controller in the NV and that we were just looking at, and there's the cable that goes out to the single board computer and the AUI. So if I had a big enough pair of cutting pliers, I could actually cut that. Not recommended. Don't try this at home.
Yeah.
But the transmitter would continue to work because on this board there's actually small push buttons and LEDs that allow you to both monitor and control the transmitter.
Yep.
Not to the same extent that you would with an AUI,
but it
but
gives you basic.
it does give you the functionality.
Yep.
Okay, so let's continue on. The VS series that we're going to talk about now is a series of low-power FM transmitters introduced last year at the NAB show that includes a fully digital exciter, some really unprecedented IP functionality. HD radio and or DRM Plus are compatible. It includes the AUI. It's Nautel, and it's very cost effective with the 300-watt version starting at only $5,000. So let's log in to an AUI within a VS series transmitter here and see what that looks like. And here's one, Scott, I believe that is in the engineering labs on your side of the building over there.
Yep.
And this one is different for several reasons. It's the latest version of software coming out in just a few weeks, we hope.
Yep.
But it also, this particular unit includes the Orban inside.
Yep.
An audio processor built right inside the transmitter. And you're actually seeing as one of the meters here, the Orban inside screens, which are showing the input level, the AGC that is working, the gain reduction, the whole thing that's going on inside the transmitter.
These are essentially the same meters. If you were looking at the front of an Orban, a real Orban processor, these are the meters that you would see. So we've just sort of duplicated them in one of our instruments.
Okay, and let's look at this another way. Let's look at how you would control this Orban inside. So if we were to bring up the Orban inside control screen, for instance, we look at the AGC, you can actually control the exact sound of this transmitter by looking at all these tabs all the way across the top and make the adjustments in the audio processing as you need.
Yeah. And what we did is we took the Orban themselves have a web interface to their audio processors, and we took a look at that and sort of duplicated to a large extent how they've done that. Just more in the interest, I think, to make sure that people who are already familiar with those products would look at this and
The
say,
look and feel is the same.
and feel very comfortable when they're using our implementation of it.
Now, one thing that I will take a little bit of credit for is I asked for this button, and you guys did it perfectly. I wanted to be able, while I was looking at and adjusting these settings, I wanted to be able to see that same meter screen. So there it is, and I can take and throw it anywhere up here on the screen on my browser, and then I can go ahead and make the changes and see that reflected in the meters at the same time. Yep, that's very powerful.
You asked for it. I knew you were going to ask for it. I didn't.
You were all ready
until you asked for it.
one of the things that's very nice about this is, common audio processing gurus will tell you that where you should adjust your audio processing is a variety of different environments. You should adjust your audio processing after listening in your car. You should adjust audio processing after listening to a portable radio in your home stereo. All of those places you should adjust your audio processing. But the only place you don't want to adjust your audio processing typically is the radio studio or the transmitter site. So what this allows you to do, as long as you've got an internet connection, is actually adjust your audio processing while you're in these very different environments and listen to it that way. Scott, what happens, we've integrated the Orban Inside card right inside the VS series transmitter as an option, and it uses all the normal inputs of the VS transmitter, and then it goes through via digital AES EBU into the Orban Inside, and then from there directly into the exciter. But what happens if that Orban Inside were to suddenly fail, as rare as that might be?
Well, of course, we don't want you to be off the air, so what it will do is it will just, you can enable an audio loss function so that the transmitter anyway has the capability to monitor the inputs, and if you lose an input and you've created a backup, then you can have it switch. Essentially, it's a preset switch. It'll switch after some time of no audio. It'll switch over. Now we've taken that same principle and used it for the Orban card. So if the audio output of the Orban card were to go away for some reason, or whatever, and then it will do, and you can set it up to switch over to another preset. And we have other limiters and other things that are maybe not quite as elegant, but you can still have
keeps you on the air.
Keeps you on the air.
Keeps
your
you
modulation. Legal. Keeps you legal. Keeps all that stuff. So you're covered that way.
So another question people are going to be asking: what about all those funky presets that I can get in my Orban 5500? Do they reside in this one as well?
We have all the same presets. And
so here they are, including a new one called Scott Test.
It is in the lab.
Yes. But these allow you then to use the same kinds of presets that you would normally do. And the F stands for factory.
And the U stands for user. I think that's essentially, when you see a star, there's this other sort of temporary one, which is what the star indicates. As you're actively working on that.
All right. So the Orban Inside has all of the normal functionality of the actual Orban 5500 series, except it doesn't use the stereo generator within the 5500, nor does it use any kind of composite clipping or anything like that that's in the 5500.
It's left and right, in and out.
That's right.
But we can use the pre-emphasis function, which is very nice. So it still has it's still got a lot of capability.
Excellent. So it has the functionality you would need. Now, one of the things that's very useful about, or the reason why we had to have the Orban Inside, is because there is such a broad range of audio inputs with the VS series. And let's talk about that for a second. Let's go into the presets for a moment and look at the preset that we're currently operating on. We're at 102.1 megahertz at 100 watts, currently in the FM mode. And we have the choice of FM. Well, if I had the digital audio,
if this were configured as an HD system,
Okay, so right now we're taking audio from a shoutcast site.
Yes.
We're bringing audio through the IP port.
This is your favorite, Chuck.
Oh, it is. It is.
All of this.
Shoutcast is a wonderful means of doing webcasting, and a lot of stations are doing webcasting in addition to their radio broadcasting. So originally we implemented this function where we could bring in audio from Shoutcast, because what if your STL went down and you were webcasting? Why, you could set your transmitter to automatically go out and find your Shoutcast site and put that on the air instead. Kind of a cool workaround to stay on the air. And we did that, but we've also had people who have started using Shoutcast as more or less of a digital STL to get audio to their transmitter, and that's very cool.
So you could show them the, if you go back to menu, Chuck, you just, but if you go to software configuration, in here, and then you choose audio player. This is where you can set up.
Here's the streams.
These are all the screens you can set up, and they just become audio sources. And then back on the preset page where Chuck was, you can choose any one of these screens.
Right.
And then there's sort of this other one called playlist. You can actually have a USB stick plugged into your transmitter. You can load it up with files, audio files. You can create a playlist, and then that becomes another option as a source of audio. So I don't have anything plugged in right now,
but then you could take
populate that. It would just be a list, and then the VS would just play through that list if that is selected as a source.
And we also have the functionality, if we had the memory stick in there, of uploading files to that memory stick. So I can actually update the audio content.
Yeah. So if you click on that tab, so you can upload audio files, which will go to a USB stick, and you can see there's a message here: the USB is not mounted. And then, you can also do your upgrade files through this menu item.
Okay, very good. So let's go back and look at the presets again, because we didn't get it all the way through. There's also 2 complete stereo SCA generators built in here, as well as a stereo generator.
Yeah.
There's also complete RDS functionality, which I suppose we should go ahead and turn on. And then it has all the functions that typically people want in both RDS or RBDS, including the alt-frequency table and all that. And then under other audio, this is one of my favorite parts because we have the opportunity of something called audio loss timeout. And an audio loss timeout, what you do is when you set that up, it says, well, what do you want to do if you have an audio loss? Well, we want to change presets. Okay. Well, what preset would you like to go to? Well, right now we're running Shoutcast, so we'll go to AES EBU. Okay. And what defines a loss of audio? Well, it's this many minutes and this many seconds below this threshold.
Yeah.
And so it's a very, very powerful tool. And you can actually create a chain. There's more than 60 of these presets built into the NXSeries that you can create and configure. And so you can create a chain of various different input configurations, including, at the very end, going to the USB stick. If it can't find audio any other place, it'll go find it at the USB stick to that playlist that you've configured.
Yep.
There's also some very simple audio processing we mentioned here earlier that you have built into here, and
of course Orban is there. So if you do decide to use Orban, if you have the card, when it's installed, that will show up.
Right.
And you can enable it, and when you enable it, then you choose the preset, the Orban preset.
So this is an important point. We're embedding an audio processing preset within a transmitter preset.
Exactly.
Okay. That's very powerful.
So you can have lots of presets that all use the same audio source, but all have different processing, Orban processing.
Right. And we also have the multiplex power limiter, which is very important for our European customers. This is very important for our European customers because they are forced to maintain their multiplex power within certain limits. Okay, there's one more thing I wanted to show, just in case people didn't think this was cool enough, and that was this screen. Now, one of the things about the AUI that I find fascinating is that I have one transmitter and it has its web server. And if I log into it, I get what I'm seeing on the screen right now. But if at the same time somebody else logs in, they get a brand new instance of the AUI. And they can see and control and monitor things simultaneously.
Yeah, that's a good point too, that all of these sessions are completely independent.
Right. Now, the interesting thing is here, I've just logged into exactly the same transmitter in your shop. And I've decided that I don't like to speak English. I would rather speak Turkish. So now I'm going to go into this transmitter and see an interface mostly in Turkish. There are some Turkish words, or there are some English words which haven't been translated into Turkish. But you can see we have the same thing going on here now in the Turkish language. I think that's very cool. I mean, you could even have, what this makes possible. And I think one of the big features of the AUI is that potentially it lets the Nautel customer service department look over your shoulder and take a look at your transmitter while you're looking at it.
That's right.
You could be in a part of the world where you speak a completely different language, more like the language on the screen at the moment. But Nautel could log in English, and that's a very good thing. Okay, so let's go back to summarize and to wrap up. Let's go back to our roadmap here and talk about the reasons why we've done this. So the idea is to avoid trips. The efficiency of the engineer today, you don't need to be spending several hours driving across tough roads to get to a transmitter site when you and then go back and get the parts when you can diagnose what's going on, understand what's going on before you ever leave your home. You can fix problems. You can enable proactive Nautel support. You can do remote installs of software, for instance. Transmitter optimization. We can go in and Nautel can come in and optimize your transmitter, make some little tweaks, and optimize your transmitter for maximum efficiency, for instance. You can change your HD configuration all without going to the transmitter site. So this is just one of a long series of webinars, a number of different topics. I would encourage you to click on this link, nautel.com/webinars, to learn about other webinars we're doing. I would encourage you to check out the Nautel Waves newsletter, check out our YouTube page for videos, and check out our Nautel store where you can buy everything from parts to transmitters right online. And if you have questions, as always, contact the Nautel sales crew or the customer service crew. Thank you for being with us. We promised to keep this to 45 minutes. We've done it. Scott, thank you very much for being a part of this today, being our guest.
Well, it's been great.
And we look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you from Hackett's Cove, Nova Scotia. Bye-bye.